is Keys to the Shop, episode 121, Working from Your Strengths with Lisa Cummings. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFurio. I'm your host for the show, and I hope you've been having a great week. Thank you for joining me. Today we're going to be talking about working from your strengths, and that is something that we definitely need to focus on a little bit more. I, for one, have always had a tendency to focus on my weaknesses, and maybe to my detriment, maybe a little bit too much. And, one of the things that we do need to focus on is what we're good at and how we can do more of it. And that's where today's guest comes in to help us understand how we can actually identify our strengths and others' strengths as well, and work from there. Work from what we're good at, what we're passionate about, what we naturally lean to, things like that. So it's really fascinating. Lisa Cummings is a strengths finder guru who travels the world helping people find and work from their strengths. And I know you're going to get a lot of benefit from Lisa's insights. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Prima Coffee. So Prima Coffee is a leading specialty coffee equipment supplier who curates the absolute best equipment from around the world to fit perfectly with the needs of both their enthusiast and professional customers. They love helping people succeed in making great coffee both at home and in the shop. It's really what drives them. And if you're looking for the best equipment and expert assistance, then look no further than prima-coffee.com. Right now, actually, is the perfect time to check them out, as all Prima customers can save $15 off of orders over $99 using the code 15GREEN. That's 15 GREEN. Some exclusions apply. If you want to be updated about the best deals, then I would encourage you to sign up for Prima's Deals newsletter. You could do that at prima-coffee.com/deals. And you can gain early access to their Black Friday and Cyber Monday deals, and those start November 17th. So if you're in the market for some great coffee equipment, if you want to brew coffee better at home or in the shop, definitely check out prima-coffee.com. And my thanks to Prima for their support of Keys to the Shop. Today's episode is also brought to you by Pacific Foods, the folks behind the Barista Series line of non-dairy performance beverages. Now, those are designed specifically for professional baristas and the standards for excellence that they demand. So whether that's soy, coconut, almond, oat, or rice milk, the ability of these beverages to take the heat from steaming, produce an unmatched silky texture, and keep the flavor balance of the beverage focused on coffee, that makes it a perfect choice for your cafe's menu. Pacific is a huge supporter of specialty coffee in the barista community, as demonstrated by these products, which are born from the input of professional baristas. And so I would highly encourage you to check out pacificfoods.com to learn more about the Barista Series line of non-dairy performance beverages, and then see how they can elevate the non-dairy offerings in your cafe. So thank you very much, Pacific, for your support of Keys to the Shop. All right, so today we're talking about working from our strengths. Of course, the question that comes up naturally is, well, what are my strengths? And there are ways we can find out. And that's actually what we're going to talk about today. Not only finding these strengths, but also finding them in others. If you're in a management or leadership position, how can you identify these things and arrange work in such a way that people who are in the cafe and you yourself can work from a place where you feel fulfilled, you feel like you're thriving, and you're not bogged down with only focusing on your weaknesses. And my tendency, for being honest, is to really be hung up on what I'm bad at. And this is kind of what the self-help industry is built on, is, you don't ask the word help unless you're thinking, help me get better at, fill in the blank. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to improve in an area. But if we overfocus on things that we're bad at, we're going to find that work becomes drudgery. We don't have a realistic view of ourselves. We have a more of a pessimistic view of ourselves. And of course, a real view of yourself should include those positive things. And, it starts from identifying what your strengths are. And today's guest has delivered training and speaking events around this to over 11,500 participants in 14 countries. We're talking with Lisa Cummings, and she's nothing short of a strengths guru. You can see her featured in places like Harvard Business Publishing, Training Magazine, and Forbes. And she's currently CEO of a company called Lead Through Strengths. With over 20 years of experience in an MBA, the most persistent trend that she sees in businesses is a lopsided focus on hard skills in the workplace. She helps people invest in their natural talents so that how you and your team get things done boosts performance and the quality of the work. And, this is such a great thing to be talking about when we work in the service industry. Like I said, our weaknesses can become glaring, and focusing on strengths is really a good shot in the arm and a great place to build from. And so I'm really excited to have this episode out there. I think it's really going to help you and your team in the cafe. So let's get into it. Let's learn about how to work from our strengths with the great Lisa Cummings. Well, hello, Lisa. Welcome to Keys to the Shop. Happy to have you here today.
Hey, glad to be here, Chris.
Yeah. You are the Strengths Finder guru. I was introduced to your work by a mutual friend, Dave Stachowiak, over at the Coaching for Leaders podcast. And you have your own podcast, Lead Through Strengths, which is fantastic, and everyone should listen to it. And you tour talking about Strengths Finder. You just got back from a pretty long one, is that right?
I did, yeah. I just came back from Bratislava, Slovakia. I was in Austria. I'm about to go to France to do it. So it's really fun, the places it's taken me.
It sounds like this is one of your strengths. This is, getting up in front of people and, beating the drum for Strengths Finder and all it can offer people.
You would hope if my life is about talking about strengths, I would at least be seeking it every day, right?
Yeah. I don't think any of us, if we've been in the professional world for any length of time, are strangers to, the realm of tests for your strengths and your personality type, and how do I find out who I am at work, basically, and tailor a career for myself. And Strengths Finder is like one of the most popular ones that we hear about. And I'm interested to know a little bit more. I haven't really dived deep into it, and I'm really looking forward to learning more about it in this conversation. But how did you become such a advocate for it, and what is Strengths Finder all about?
I became a big advocate for it when I was the first time I was a manager, and the first time I got promoted into that role, and I was just trying to not be sucky at it. So I started reading every book I could get my hands on, and I found First Break All the Rules and Strengths Finder, and they just opened my eyes to so many things I couldn't see before. I think the most significant one was there was a person on the team who I just was not jiving with, and I was thinking, oh man, am I going to have to fire this person? Is there real value on the team to keep her around? And Strengths helped me see that there were all of these things she was contributing that I wasn't willing to see because of my own preferences. And when I could reframe all of those things that were getting on my nerves as things that were actually valuable to the team and not areas where I want to spend my headspace, it was like the eureka moment of, wow, we all bring something different. And instead of being annoyed by each other when someone's opposite from you or different from you, if you value it and you see the positive intent that they bring as a leader, you can see the potential in people that you were unwilling to see, even if you didn't think you were being unwilling. You could see that in the past. It's like, I thought I was a nice person. I thought I was a good person. I thought I was trying to see the good in people, but I was really blind to a lot of things. So it opened me up entirely. And that was kind of the moment of change when I got to experience it with the team. And then years later, it became what I did for a living because I believed in it so much.
Did it change that relationship?
Oh, absolutely. All of a sudden, yeah, she's like a rock star. And when you expect somebody to be a rock star, guess what? They live into it quite a lot more than when you're thinking, oh, this person's really frustrating. Everything they do is, it's kind of like self-fulfilling prophecy where everything they do supports your hypothesis about them being frustrating or about them being a rock star. And it seems almost silly that a little tool with a simple report could give you that much insight into each other, but it opens the door to conversations that you just don't have until you start to have that openness about each other and what the other person brings.
Sure, and they probably are picking up what you're putting down, even though you don't think you're being as obvious about your feelings toward them. They probably understand that you don't think the world of them at that point.
That's such a good point. Yeah, you think you have a poker face and you think, oh, I just bring good vibes to the office regardless of the person. But yeah, they sense it. They know it.
Yeah. So the StrengthsFinder test and the framework for thinking about, approaching what we do at work, what we're good at, et cetera. Describe that to us. It sounds just powerful.
Yeah, sure. So the survey itself is 177 questions. It takes people usually about a half an hour, but up to 45 minutes to take it. And there are these forced choice things. It's basically asking you, do you like this or this? Do you like this or this? And it forces you to pick one or the other. And based on how strongly you rank these things that keep showing up for you, it's understanding which patterns are most prevalent in the way that you think and feel and act at work. And it's funny, it's something really simple because you go through the survey and you're thinking, oh my gosh, well, yes, I'm yes and yes. I like both of those things so much, or no and no, I don't like either of those things. So even those, when you answer neutral, it is going to throw out that answer because you don't feel stronger on one item than another. So it's basically going through this process, and it's a great test. I think it's a 200-page meta-analysis that the PhD researchers who create this instrument, how they validate the tool and all of that. So it's a legit kind of assessment. And what's different about it after you get through all of the questions is you get these reports. And instead of being a personality assessment, like most of them, I won't get too nerdy on you, but most of them are based on these 5 factors in psychology. And then most of them throw out the 5th one, which is neuroses. And they essentially say, are you more of a task person or a people person? That sort of kind of scale. Whereas StrengthsFinder, it's a different scale. It's kind of like apples and oranges, where they studied themes of performance, what made people most successful in their lives and their workplaces. And then they created these themes around these things that could bring you success. So the way I look at them is you get the report and it gives you some hints toward your easy buttons and when you show up at the office. And so what's brilliant about it to me is you look at it and you think, oh yeah, that looks like me, but I've never really thought about those as conscious volume dials I could turn up or turn down at the office. So it just unleashes this conversation and this awareness about pieces of you that maybe you didn't even know would be valued in the workplace. So if you're a leader, it's huge because it tells you something about how you lead. It also obviously helps you see this insight into all of your team members. And then same for them. It gives them all the insight. And then it opens this conversation. Now you have a shared language and you have conversations that you normally would have avoided when you were having these conflict moments, or even when you saw someone doing something awesome, you didn't know how to recognize it in the context of what's important to a person. So even for the good stuff, for recognition, it helps you say, oh yeah, I totally saw your belief in action when this happened, or I totally saw when the lines were really long and the customers were getting frustrated standing there, I saw your command, boom, just take action and move quickly and calmly and decisively and make people feel at ease that this was going to, get over with soon and that everything would be fine and back to normal. And so the small things like that, where you can start to recognize based on their talents, is also really powerful because then they start to live into them proudly.
That's powerful because people want specific recognition rather than just general good job, pat on the back, but it's not instructive for how to behave later because it's not very specific.
Hey, that's a great point too, because I'm always talking about noticing what works to get more of what works. So if you're leading a team or even just amongst your peers, notice what you want to see more of because it's easy for people to repeat versus noticing all of the stuff that goes wrong. And a lot of times, like people can get behind that idea and they'll think, yeah, that sounds good, but they don't really, in the moment, they don't know what to say. So they just go, good job, Chris. Good job, Joe. Good job, Jane. And good job feels really empty. And at some point, if somebody says it a lot, you just blow it off because you're like, yeah, just say good job. They're not really saying anything behind it. But if you say, man, I really saw your includer on fire when you noticed that customer come in and almost snuck in and no one knew they were in the room and you made them feel like they belong here. Or, oh my gosh, your ideation was on fire when you had the idea of bringing in musical acts and now everybody is viewing this as a great hangout place on Fridays when our business was low on those days and it was your ideation that set that on fire. It's just being able to attribute it to things and it makes it easier for you as a leader and a peer to go, yep, that was that one talking. That was great.
That's so true that we always, as managers, will focus on the negatives because there's a lot. It's so easy to see the things that we don't want. It's harder to really dig into the things that we do want to see. And it seems like you end up with a bunch of people with their hands in their pockets saying, well, I'm not doing anything, so I guess I'm not getting in trouble, but I'm not making any progress either.
Oh, isn't that true? I used to have a boss who would say, if you're leaning, you could be cleaning. If you're leaning, you could be cleaning. If you're leaning, you could be cleaning. And at first he would say, stop leaning, stop just hanging around, leaning on the wall with your hands on your pockets. And then people just did exactly what you said. And then all of a sudden he came up with what do I want you to do instead? And people, we were all like, oh, this is what we do with our time instead of talking to each other. Aha, okay.
So you were mentioning, describing these things, you were mentioning different themes or talents that people have, or strengths rather, ideation, you said command and inclusion. How many different strengths are there? And I'm sure there's subcategories of these things as well.
Yeah, there are 34 potential talent themes. So there are quite a lot compared with most of the normal assessments you would do. So what turns out to be cool is, so if you do the regular assessment, you get your top 5. And then you can also now, Gallup has lowered the price of it quite a bit. So now you can see for $50, you can see at least as of today, the prices change over time, but it used to be closer to $100 to see the full stack rank of 34, which can also be insightful because when you see your bottom and you realize what sucks the life out of you and drains you to call on them, that's kind of helpful too. But what's neat about having 34 potential themes, and yeah, they call them talent themes because inside of each theme, there are little different flavors and different subcategories, like you said, and they're not named with a word, but it definitely is a theme that captures the essence inside of these 34. And then the chances that anybody else would have the same top 5 in the same order as you is 1 in 33 million. And the chances that anyone would have the same top 5 in any order is 1 in 278,000. So when you do it with your team, what's so cool is they feel like the unique snowflake unicorn kind of person that they want to be. They're like, yes, I'm a complex, unique human. Don't try to put me in a box with 4 labels. And at the same time, the language is really simple. So people can understand, like instantly when I said command, you knew what I meant. And when I said ideation, you knew what I meant. And even though there are a couple that require a little bit of a definition that might be different from what you mean by it, it's so easy to understand. And so people they get with it, the program with it really easily because it says, like, here are some words that say how awesome I am. And it's easy for you to get them and for us to see them in each other.
So this is something that obviously it works best when the whole team has partaken in this and they know your strengths, you know their strengths, and we're all speaking the same language. So no one's going to turn their head to the side and be like, I have no idea what you meant by restorative, but sure.
Absolutely is the best when you could do it with the whole team. But even if you are strapped for cash and you don't have the budget, just go to Amazon, buy the book StrengthsFinder 2.0 for yourself, spend $20, know your own. And especially if you're listening as a leader and you're thinking, how does this inform the way I manage the team or show up or give them? One example that the strengths research has shown is that what a team needs most from you as a leader are hope, stability, compassion, and trust. And it's interesting because you think of all the subject matter expertise and all the things about the operations of running a shop. But if you step back and think, how do my talent themes influence the way that I bring hope, stability, compassion, and trust? It gives you a whole nother layer of focus for how you show up and direct the work and the outcomes.
Right. That's a great point. And even if, all of the team, or maybe you don't have the approval to go ahead and spend that on all the team to get the assessment, you could just put it in your own words and describe to them ideation or restorative in a way that's like, hey, you are somebody who fixes things really well, and I appreciate that.
Yes, that's exactly it. There are so many cheap and free things you can do. I mean, I call it a noticing campaign. Just go on a noticing campaign where I do something like I stick coins in my pocket, or you stick them in your apron or whatever, and you put 3 or 5 of them in your pocket, and you make it your goal that you empty it out every day, and you notice something, no matter how small, that someone did, where you see somebody has a sniffly nose and they're really being conscious of food safety and they're not wiping their hand in front of people or, this might seem like basic stuff, but things like, hey, I really appreciate that you cared about that and you did your extra hand washing today, or somebody who is just on fire with the way that they greet customers. And you realize that when that person is saying hello to people, it changes the vibe and everybody around wants to be part of it. And you don't have to call that woo because you don't know if they have that talent theme, but the one that makes people feel welcome and included and feel like they're a part of a social something, you can see that and just you see it and then you say it out loud instead of just noticing, oh, that was good. And instead of thinking, I'm not going to give people a trophy for every, small action that they do, instead just overdo the praise with specifics, not just good job, buddy. Mm-hmm. And it really does create a repetition of the things that you wanted to see. It's amazing.
So when we're thinking about strengths and our staff and ourselves, one of the questions that comes to mind, specifically for coffee shops, I think is, we want to be in positions where we're strongest, obviously, because not just because they're easier, because it's more rewarding. We just got done talking about what brings you life, and how do we go about placing people according to their strengths in a setting where, we're kind of doing the same job? There's not many job descriptions in the cafe, and most of them are for the barista position, and it's pretty fixed. So, how do you overcome that hurdle when it's just like, well, you're all doing the same job, but, how do you place people according to their various strengths in the midst of a sort of the same job?
Yeah, it's so powerful that you asked that, because the natural thing that you think when you hear it is, oh, well, this would be great if I knew, to use the metaphor that everyone uses, I want to get people in the right seats on the bus. And you go, okay, well, great. I have the barista seat. So what do I do with that? I can't come up with a bunch of new jobs just to fit people into their strengths. This is the beautiful thing about StrengthsFinder. Normally, we're obsessed with what people do. Think about job descriptions, think about the resumes when they're applying, think about your interview process. It's very much about what you're going to do on the job. What StrengthsFinder helps you see is their most natural patterns of how they think and feel and act on the job. And so what it informs is how they do any of the job duties. So instead of what, which is covered, you shouldn't skip the what because that's knowledge and skills and experiences, but the how is where strengths fills in a gap that most people have been ignoring. And so it would tell you for all of the basic duties, whether it's cleaning or preparing drinks, you can look at your strength and think, okay, how do my talent themes help me do the given work that I'm doing. So if personally I looked at mine and I said, well, I have individualization and I really love to understand what makes each person unique and what makes them tick. And so it might be that it helps me get to know my regulars really well and know things about them so they feel part of a community and they want to come back because this feels like their family. It could be something like I have the maximizer talent theme, and that talent theme is obsessed with always making it better and better and better and better. So I might be full of ideas about how we could improve things or how I could personally get better and keep stepping my game up. And those are things that are easy for me to tap into because they're in my top 5. But for the next person, if they have intellection and that makes them a deep thinker and really curious and creative, it might be a totally different path, but they can get the same outcome. It's just using the ones that make them feel alive and energized, and they do it with ease instead of trying to do it your way.
Mm-hmm. So you're coming up with a framework of thinking about the same work, just approached in different ways than how you can put your twist on it, or how you just naturally put your twist on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's the naturally put your twist on it. And then there's the situation like if you're running into a problem at work, like let's say you have a new point of sale system and you need people to do something when they're checking people out that they weren't doing it before. I mean, you could do something even as simple as like, we weren't entering the number of guests and I really want that data now because there's something I'm going to do with it when I'm leading the team. You can look at each person's talent theme and understand what might make them care about that thing. Like somebody who has an empathy talent might care about you as their manager because they don't want you to get fired and they want you to be viewed as a good person to the owner. And so it can be, hey, this is data that we haven't been collecting, and it's really important for me to be able to do some of the analytics for the cafe that we have not been doing in the past. And it really matters to our success, to my personal success, to yours. You know, it could be one of those things where you make it a personal deal. And if someone has an empathy talent or a harmony talent or one of these relationship talent themes, they care more about you as a person and what it means to you. Whereas someone with the analytical talent, if you told them about some of the things you could do when you're nerding out on the data, if we knew these trends, we could make these kinds of decisions about what inventory we stock and which roasters we work with and what we sell when people stick around for 3 hours and buy 10 drinks. I'm exaggerating, but you get the idea. If we sell this, they buy baked goods, and if we sell that, they don't. And so someone with analytical would nerd out on the analytics behind it. So it tells you as a manager how you can frame things up for your team that they actually care about.
And it really does put you in a position to effectively make it a team effort instead of what happens is a manager will take on too much themselves. Everybody's got their job description. Y'all are just making coffee, but I've got my plate stacked. They got a 60-hour week, and they struggle to delegate effectively because they don't know how to delegate, and everybody's kind of atrophying underneath them as a result. So it sounds like this is a really great way to make running a cafe a team effort while occupying your specific job descriptions.
Yeah, that's such a smart thing that you picked up on. I do this exercise with people where I have them analyze what they want more of, where it's just really simple phrases that the team looks at and they look at it and they go, oh yeah, if I had more of that in my day, that would make me feel alive. That would really bring me energy. I would be excited to show up to work. And then the manager gets to see, okay, well then that's the kind of stuff I can delegate to that person, because it's very much for all of us as humans, one person's trash task is another person's treasure task. And you can you mentioned restorative, and I look at it and think, if my manager came to me and said, I'm just going to give you all my problems and that's how I'm going to delegate to you. Personally, probably because I have a positivity talent, I would be like, oh, that really sucks the life out of me. But if you have the restorative talent, it's exciting to solve problems. It's exciting to dig in. And they would be the person saying, give me all your big hairy stuff and let me work it out. That's really fun. And so then what happens is you get to reframe the person who, when you're a manager, like you said, if you're just going to drop in for 2 hours and you want to get a vibe on people and the store and what's going on, maybe the person who had restorative before was the negative Nelly, because every time you walk in, they're like, hey, you need to know this is broken. This is going to be a problem. This is going to be a problem. Well, now, instead, if they're your problem spotter, now that they're your problem solver, and you put them on that job, and then you start delegating it and say, bring me the proposals, bring me the solutions, or start giving them some, ability to solve them on their own. Now you took something that was annoying you about the person and they become one of your key players because you used what they love to do and how they're already going to be thinking anyway.
Excellent. Kind of goes right back to that illustration you used in the beginning of the conversation of that individual that you were managing that you couldn't get along with. And it seems like they were giving you a sign that they had something that you needed to tap into, not something that you needed to distance yourself from.
Yeah, totally.
Nice. I'm a restorative. I took the initial assessment. Restorative is one of my top 5. So this podcast makes sense now, huh?
Makes so much sense. And why, when I've talked to you before, when you've said you can stand in a shop and see what's going on with an operation, and you can diagnose so easily by standing from afar and observing, almost like those consulting skills that it gives you as Chris. Like, I would walk in and I would see totally different things because of different talent themes. So it's definitely a superpower, whether you're a consultant or you're a barista, any of the situations.
Exactly. So this is kind of touching on an issue that I think is really, it's probably on a lot of people's minds. So I'll just say weaknesses. We all like so much of the self-help section of the bookstore, or no, the Amazon bookstore, is guided towards helping people work on their weaknesses. We want to help people stop doing those things. And we talked about that a little bit here. And it sounds like one of the ways to frame weaknesses in this is to sort of redefine weaknesses as opportunities for strengths. But I don't think I have that right. Like, how do you, like, you don't expect us to ignore weaknesses, do you?
You are correct. Don't ignore the weaknesses. Don't do it. It might be a quick path to get fired. So, yeah, if you have a weakness, let's define a weakness. So the operating definition that I use is if it's getting in the way of your performance, or if it's getting in the way of someone else's performance, then you can look at it like a weakness. Some people will create these weaknesses in their heads, and it will wreck their careers. And they'll think, oh, every other shop owner or manager or barista or whatever, every other one that I know that is amazing has these qualities, and I don't. And therefore, I need to spend my whole life seeking out those qualities that I don't have. That is where it's a losing game. That's what I call the path of most resistance, because instead of looking at something that is really hard for you to access, drains you, sucks the life out of you, you procrastinate when you think about it, spending your life doing that really is a losing game. And it's a really frustrating way to live your life and live your career. So I definitely do agree when you mention the idea of, can you figure out what outcome you're trying to get that you're not getting, and then do it through a strength instead? So before worrying about and obsessing over the weakness that's breaking you, a lot of times you can say, oh, there's this weakness. Yeah, it's a problem with my performance. But if I did it this way instead, through my strengths, something that I can access easily, brings me energy, it's actually fun to do, then boom, I've solved the problem. I mean, here's an example. So you take a barista who has to clean the bathrooms because they have to get cleaned. And all the person can think of is how it's gross because they're exposed to people's poop. It's just like this person is thinking that is gross. I like coffee. I don't like poop. But then if you identify, okay, they have the connectedness talent theme. And if you can tap into that instead and say, okay, I'm creating an experience that has a ripple effect. If someone has connectedness, they see all the connections amongst things and people. And so they would understand that the experience that the person has when they walk into the restroom creates the vibe of the place that they're in. It creates this space that they come to many times a week outside of their home. And so I'm creating an atmosphere for them that affects their life in a positive way. And it makes them want to come back again. And it helps us have a relationship with each other. And it makes them a repeat customer. And all of that comes because I'm willing to see that when I walk in to do the restroom cleaning part, that it's really meaningful. And so sometimes you can do things, they seem like weaknesses, where this person's like, I'm sorry, I just have like a gag reflex and I can't do it. And it's just one of my weaknesses and it's just awful. And then they get all spun up in their head about these silly things that really aren't that big of a deal. because it's just what they're making it mean. And then they decide they're going to look through their strengths and they make it mean something meaningful to them, something that matters to them. And suddenly the same thing that was annoying the heck out of them, then the next week, all of a sudden, it's like, okay, this matters and I believe in it now. And so it doesn't bother me to do it. And I think that's one of the most powerful ways to reframe. People might call them weaknesses or areas where they don't try, or the areas that they hate and they procrastinate. Because sometimes there's just the stuff you don't like and it's kind of separate from weaknesses. Mm-hmm. And strengths are really helpful for that too. And it's a little bit of a Jedi mind trick kind of thing, but it is really powerful. Even if you tell yourself, yep, I'm doing some Jedi mind tricks, but yeah, I'm reminding myself there's this other reason why I do these things. And now all of a sudden I'm motivated to do it.
That's excellent. And it seems like it takes a lot of purposeful thinking and planning of tasks that are rote, and just, as a barista, 30 hours a week or so per week, I go through the day and, there's days where you just don't think about what you're doing. Everybody has that in every industry. There's just stuff you go home and you think, I don't even know what I did today. I guess you could still be in your strengths doing that, but initially to really maximize, what you're getting out of work and what you contribute, it seems like there must be a phase where you have to analyze and dissect what you do and superimpose your strengths over the top of that and see how you can reframe it. Is there usually a real hard build up of momentum, and then it becomes easier once you start to apply these into your daily activities?
Well, it's interesting because it's just like personal development in many ways, where as soon as you have this big, strong ramp up and you say, whoa, this has unlocked so many things for me. And then you walk through another door and you realize, oh my gosh, there's so much more that I could be doing or should be doing with this. So if you're doing it in earnest, it really is a lifetime. I've been doing it for 15 years now. And still every day I see, oh, whoa, here's how one is a liability for me. Here's when I turn the volume up too high all the time on. I need to back that one down in certain situations. Here's one that serves me so well in many ways, or, oh, here's a new way I could use this one. So it is a lifetime kind of thing, but it is so powerful. It's kind of like you said, you go through the duties and responsibilities. And even if you are listening to this and you have a team and you can't afford to buy the book for every person, then just write down all of the things that come up in a given day, everything from the basics of the responsibilities all the way through the situations like long line or grumpy customer or you're grumpy that day or whatever the thing is, all the stuff that comes up, and get the team to come up with all of the ones that relate to everybody in the team. And then start going back through the list and think, which of these, this is without StrengthsFinder, you can just look through and go, which of these make me feel excited? Which of these are fun for me? What things do I bring that aren't even on the list? Like, you probably have that person who nerds out on the story of the roasters, and they're the ones coming to the cafe every day going, oh man, and they're telling the customer the story, and the customer gets enrolled in it. Well, maybe they have learner and input, but they don't have a label for it because they haven't done StrengthsFinder. But it's just one of those things like, what do you love about the job, or where do you really nerd out? And so I use these, I call it the 3 E's. It's ease, energy, and enjoyment. So when you run through the list of all the things you do, what's easy to you, that's easier for you than maybe for the average bear to learn or to pick up on or to want to do. Then there's energy, which things that when you're doing them, you just get really excited. And this can be something as silly as, I'm the creative one. And if I write somebody's name on a paper cup, I put a little doodle on it and I make an icon that represents their life. And it's something that no one else in the cafe does, but it's my thing and the customers like it and I like it and it makes me excited. That's what I'm talking about. It's ease. And then enjoyment, just what's the stuff that you like versus the stuff that you don't like. And you start to see what lights you up. And then it helps you as the barista, it helps you focus on the things that bring you the little glimmers of joy throughout even if they're 10-second glimmers. And then as a manager, it does the same. You start watching for this and you see, oh, this person's face lights up when they're doing this thing. This person would rather clean the machines than work on neat looking things made of foam, so it depends on who who is who, and you see the one who likes one thing or the other, and then you can start to put them, you're not going to assign the role totally on that thing, but in a given situation, you can start to say, hey, can you manage this right now? Or, oh, look, you merchandise the baked goods like a ninja, and they always look more appetizing to people when you do it. You come alive when, Joe over there just puts them in a pile and no one wants to eat them.
Joe, that guy.
Yeah, Joe. He just doesn't like merchandising. What are you going to do? He's about the coffee, not about the pastry.
We'll talk with him. We'll reframe it in a strengths way. But it's like you're not going to do that thing 8 hours a day, though. Like maybe a certain percentage of your day is made up of the thing that gives you that ease, the energy, and et cetera. But a lot of the stuff around those things are just things that aren't maybe in your strengths zone or in that way. Is it enough to just have some of it during the day, like that, where it would really make a big difference to somebody that they get to do it at all?
Yeah, it does make a difference. It's interesting. I think it's a good thing to bring up what you just said, because if you view it as only puppy dog kisses, rainbows, and kumbaya as the goal of this, then people won't even believe it. They're like, that's not real life. That's not how it works. So trying to expect that of yourself, that every moment will be strengths and happiness, is not realistic. I mean, like you just mentioned, I went to Slovakia recently. To get to Bratislava from Austin, Texas is not that easy. It took 27 hours. I got to tell you, I hated those 27 hours. I don't sit down well. My back still hurts from it 2 weeks later. So that's a terrible part of the job to me, sitting on airplanes for a really long time, especially when you're in coach and you don't have a lay flat bed. So there are these situations that are crappy about every job, even when you're doing what you love. I love what I do. So the couple of things that you can get out of it, one is I just talk about this in terms of a few minutes more a day in your strength zone and a few minutes fewer in your weakness zone. It is that simple. That feels realistic to people. And when you look at those lists, like when I said, take an inventory of all the stuff that you do in a day and that happens to you in a day, and think which ones are in the strength zone, which ones are in the weakness zone, just have a goal of getting a few more minutes in one and a few fewer minutes and the ones that drive you crazy. And what happens is they snowball. And then over time you look up and you realize, oh, instead of 50-50 in my strengths and weaknesses, now I'm at 60-40. And a year later, I'm at 70-30. And some of it is because of the activities that you're doing. Some of it is because of the way you're approaching them. Some of it is because of the way you're thinking of them. But it really begins to add up over time when you look up and you think, wow, overall, I really like my life. I really like the work. I really like to show up every day. I really like how this feels. And so that's a much more realistic view, is just getting more of it every day over time. And I call it job shaping. It's shaping your role even when you feel like the job description is already totally defined for you. No one gets to tell you how you think about a given task. That example I gave with connectedness and the girl who doesn't like poop, but she likes to create an environment. Well, no one can control her mind and how she's thinking about the task, but she can suddenly take that thing that made her feel drained and in her weakness zone. Now suddenly it can be in her strengths because she's making meaning out of the same activity.
Even if she's in a cafe that doesn't recognize her efforts and strengths, like a lot of us are in the midst of jobs where we're thinking, boy, it might be time for me to leave this job. But I found this framework of thinking, and it sounds like something that even if you're not in the place where you really want to be physically, and people don't really appreciate what you're doing, it seems like it's worth it to do, even if you're not going to get recognized for it.
You're tapping into something that is so big. It doesn't matter what's going on around you. All that stuff can be helpful, but yeah, you can be in a cruddy job with a cruddy manager in a cruddy cafe, and you can decide some of these things for yourself, and it can turn it around significantly. And it really is amazing. Think about a person, like if I just take an example and build it into what you just said. Let's take somebody who has and empathy talent. And empathy in StrengthsFinder language is one that it goes beyond just kind of the typical emotional intelligence that we think of when we use that word. And it's a little more spidey sense level, somebody who can really know what somebody's experiencing right now. So imagine they're in a cafe with in a situation that is not going well. The store's no good, manager's no good, they want to quit, life's bad. But then they think, I'm going to use my empathy and I'm going to make customers feel seen today. That's it. I'm going to show them that I see them. And that's it. And suddenly that person who gets to have that exchange that happens in their eyes with each other makes them like their job way more than they did the day before. And they're not doing anything different as far as job duties are concerned. So yeah, you just tapped into something that is amazing what you can do with it. It gets to your core values. It gets to your deepest motivations. And that's the stuff. I mean, that's being human. If we were robots, we would all see the job exactly the same because we would just do the tasks. But we have all this emotion around things, and you really can change the experience of the job just by thinking through a lens of strengths and what brings you ease, energy, and enjoyment, and seeking out more of that, even if it's for just a couple of minutes.
Beautiful. Yeah. And it looks good on your resume to be able to say specifically what your strengths are, even though you didn't have the most ideal circumstance. Instead of saying like, I'm a team player and, normal things, like if you go to a better job, you at least have some practice before you get there.
Yeah. Oh, that's a big one too. I always kid around with people about how every resume says, I'm a motivated team player. Well, those are good things to be, except that's what 95% of the resumes say. So how could you come up with something that sounds more unique to you? And looking at your StrengthsFinder report, it helps you with that. I have some resources that people can look at even just a page of adjectives and think, okay, which of these describe me that sound more unique, that describe the way a customer experiences me or a team experiences me?
So what's our next step when, at the end of this conversation, we're really wanting to explore this and apply it to our own careers or to our team, to ourselves? Like, what would you say are the most ideal, first 3 steps we can take for making this a real part of the way we view ourselves and our work?
All right, let's see. 3 steps. So step 1, buy yourself the book at least. Go spend $20 on yourself, even if it's not paid for, and you're going to experience something different listening to this personally. And I didn't write the book, so I don't get anything out of you. Buy the book. It's genuinely a value. And then the next one is do that exercise that I described. So number 2 would be write down all of the job duties and responsibilities, all the things that show up on your to-do list, your calendar, and your day-to-day responsibilities, and the situations that come up. Situations, I mean things like the lines are long, a customer is rude, those kind of things. And then go through that list and look at which of these things do you have fun with and which of these things suck the life out of you. And that's a way to get a clue into your strength zone and your weakness zone. And then the third thing is going to be on that topic that you were talking about, how as humans we have this cognitive bias of being negative all the time. And it's so easy to see, stop doing that. I don't want to see that anymore. I wish they would not do that. I call that not it syndrome. And especially if you're in a place of giving feedback. Obviously, if you manage a shop, you are, but this is even something peers grapple with each other. You want to tell somebody something that isn't working, and all you can see is, this is not it. So stop doing this. People do this with their kids all the time as well. Stop doing that. Stop. No. Quit that. Turn that off. No. And what it does is it leaves the person wondering, okay, well, if that's not it, I could try this. Well, no, that's not it either. Okay, I could try this. And then they tell you that's not it either. I could try this. It leaves you this infinite amount of things that you could go do. But if instead you focus your feedback on it, oh, that is it, which is recognition. Oh, that's awesome. Do more of that. So this is about going on the noticing campaign. Notice what works so you can get more of what works. When you give recognition, it's easy for people to repeat. When you give not it feedback, they don't know what to do. So they either keep trying and failing without direction, or like you mentioned, they stand with their hands in their pockets, afraid of getting told that that's not it. So it's pretty demotivating. And if you experiment with that third one and just go on a recognition campaign and notice everything you can and be willing to say it out loud, and don't be afraid of overpraising, because 51% of people in the workplace, in some research that was done by Gallup, it said that people believe they have not received recognition in the last year. So if 51% of people believe they haven't seen recognition in the last year, don't worry about overdoing it. People feel like they don't get it even when they do get some. So those would be my top 3.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's stuff we can just do like within the week. That's great. And I really enjoyed taking the initial assessment. I really encourage people to do that and to follow those 3 steps. It's going to do nothing but improve your situation. And thank you, Lisa, for being here and just laying this out for us. It's really incredible to get to hear your expertise about this. If people want to explore more of your work, even bring you in to help explore this more with their company, like where can we find out more about what you do with StrengthsFinder?
Yeah, thank you. Well, Lead Through Strengths is a podcast. So if you're a podcast listener, you probably like podcasts. So check that out, because we do give lots of team tips and activities and things that you can do there, and a lot of Q&A. And I have a website by the same address. That's our company name as well, leadthroughstrengths.com. So if you check that out, you'll find lots of resources. And we're continuing to put out things based on the talent themes, but also exercises. I'll just give you a quick one. If you do leadthroughstrengths.com/adjectives, you could use that with your team for the exercise that I mentioned, where you look at the list of things that describe you when you're at your best and come up with a list of things, so that you could say, hey, this is what I want my career brand to be about. And you can come up with some things besides motivated team player to put on your resume.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Lisa. I'm really honored to have you on the show. I'm just challenged to explore this topic more myself. Thank you for your wisdom on this.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me and for spreading strengths.
So I really enjoyed this conversation with Lisa. I feel like it's very timely, especially because the intensity of our work in the retail world starts to pick up around this time of year. And as we start to notice the shortcomings of ourselves and our coworkers, it's helpful to think about how we can be focusing on helping each other work from the places where we are naturally talented in. Managers, this is such a great opportunity to place people in positions that are life-giving to them as much as you possibly can. And the cafe seems like a great place to practice these techniques. We're working right next to one another for, 6 to 8 hours a day, maybe longer. And you really get to know people by observing their actions. So we have every opportunity to sort of take notes and use that information of how people react in these different ways in these different situations to that person's benefit. And you can notice the same things about yourself in those situations. So I would encourage you to take what Lisa has said to heart. Start applying these principles and these techniques in the cafe, and maybe take the next step and get the assessment for you and your team, and see how it can really help you and your customers have a great experience at work when you're working from your strengths. So if you want to contact Lisa and find out more about what she does and more about her company, just go to leadthroughstrengths.com. You can also find her podcast on iTunes under the same name, Lead Through Strengths. I highly encourage doing both. And thank you so much, Lisa, for joining us on the show and really kind of cracking this open for us and getting our minds churning about ways that we can really thrive at work by focusing on our strengths. I really appreciate your wisdom and insights here. Now, if you want the show notes for this episode, you can go to keystotheshop.com, and on the sidebar, there's a place for you to enter your email address to sign up for the newsletter. And what that does is it will just deliver the show notes to your inbox directly. And it's really useful because these are the main points and takeaways, resources, etc. from each episode. It's just a good reference to have when you want to recall the information from each show and really apply it to your career, which I'd encourage you to do. So keystotheshop.com, and it's as easy as that. Now, if you want to reach out to me directly, it's chris@keystotheshop.com. Just email me if you have questions, comments, feedback. And also, if you're interested in working with Keys to the Shop Consulting, focusing on helping you just bring your quality, hospitality, and your operations in your cafe to the next level, there are lots of ways that I can use my strengths as a coffee professional of almost 20 years to help you really dial in your cafe and your retail experience. So again, chris@keystotheshop.com, and look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate the time you take out of your day to listen to these episodes, and I just hope that each one is beneficial for your business and you and your career. Nothing would bring me more joy than to know that these things are having an impact on you. So thank you again, and as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.